destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 1 o'clock. I'm Olivia Guthrie in the GB newsroom. The Red Cross is attempting to carry out another evacuation in the besieged Ukrainian city of Mariupol. It follows an agreement with Russia to open 7 humanitarian corridors for civilian evacuations today. Overnight, buses of refugees arrived in Zaporizhia. Some of the passengers have reportedly stood throughout the 12-hour journey due to the huge number of people trying to escape. Ukraine is warning of what they're calling heavy battles in the country's eastern and southern regions, including Mariupol. An advisor to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says that troops around Kyiv have retaken more than 30 towns or villages in the region. He also says troops are holding the front line against Russian forces in the east. It follows President Zelensky saying the situation remains difficult.
In
the north of the country, the occupiers continued to retreat, slowly but noticeably. In the east, the situation remains extremely difficult. Russian troops are moving to Donbass and towards Kharkiv. They're preparing new strikes. We're preparing an ever more active defence.
Meanwhile, Russia's space director says his country will no longer cooperate on the International Space Station. Dmitry Rogozin says normal ties with NASA and other agencies will only be possible once what he's calling illegal sanctions against Moscow are lifted. It's after an American astronaut and 2 Russian cosmonauts landed safely in Kazakhstan on Wednesday, having left the ISS on board the same capsule. The suspension of P&O ferry services is being partly blamed for long queues at Dover today. 3 of the operator's vessels are berthed in the port after safety inspections. Drivers have reportedly been forced to wait for hours to board ferries. The Department for Transport says efforts are being made to minimise the disruption. It's been confirmed Metropolitan Police Commissioner Dame Cressida Dick will leave her post on the 10th of April. She's tweeted, "It's been a tremendous honour to serve the people of London and the UK." Dame Cressida quit in February after the Mayor of London said he'd lost confidence in her leadership. Protests are taking place across the UK today over the rising price of energy bills. Yesterday, millions around the UK saw their energy bills go up by an average of £700 a year as the price cap rose. An austerity campaign group says the demonstrations will highlight the real hardships people are facing, with many having to choose whether to eat or heat. Asda's chairman, Lord Stuart Rose, has told GB News the government has been slow to act and it needs to do more to support people who are struggling.
I would just emphasise to the powers that be that they have to, first of all, remember that we are the 6th largest economy in the world. I myself was walking down the street the other day and saw a large queue of people queuing outside a food bank. And I thought to myself, here we are, the 6th largest economy in the world, and we've got people queuing for food. That can't be right and it can't be sustainable. So we've got to find a way in the short term of helping them.
Parents and carers can now book COVID jabs for children aged between 5 and 11 years old in England. They'll be able to make an appointment for a vaccine or go to a walk-in clinic from Monday. Children will be offered 2 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech jab, at least 12 weeks apart. And today marks 40 years since Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands. 255 British soldiers died, along with 650 Argentinians in the conflict, after Margaret Thatcher ordered the territory to be recaptured. Pipers are being asked to play in a national commemoration on June the 18th to remember those who were killed and wounded in the 74-day conflict. Former head of the British Army, General Lord Dannatt, has told GB News he remembers where he was when he heard about the invasion. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. We'll have more at the top of the next hour. Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK's looking a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers and remaining rather chilly. Let's take a look at the details. The southwest will be rather cloudy, particularly in the west, where there'll also be the most frequent showers. The best of the sunny spells will be across eastern areas. The southeast will be mostly dry, although an isolated light shower is possible this evening. The winds will be light, with plenty of sunny spells. There'll also be sunny spells and isolated showers across Wales, but drier for much of the day, especially in the west. It will be a mostly dry end to the afternoon across the Midlands too. An isolated light shower is possible, but for most it will be light winds and bright or sunny spells. The northeast of England will finish Saturday afternoon with plenty of dry weather. Earlier showers will have faded and we end the day with light winds and plenty of sunshine on offer. There'll also be plenty of sunshine across southern Scotland this evening. There'll be some cloud at times too, but it will remain dry to end the day. It's a similar story for Northern Ireland this evening. Dry here also, with some fair weather, cloud and sunny spells, leading to a cold and frosty night to come. Clear spells and light winds will also lead to a cold and frosty night across most of the UK tonight, and that's how the weather's shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
It's time for Talking Pints here in the GB News Tavern, and I'm joined by an American friend of mine, Jason Miller. Jason, welcome to Talking Pints.
Cheers. Good.
Thank you for being here. Now, I bet there are people at home who think, gosh, my boss is really difficult. My boss has moods. My boss tells me what he thinks or she thinks. And you worked as senior advisor to Donald Trump. That's no easy job, is it?
No, I usually liken it to being on a roller coaster with no seatbelt. And you just never know if you're going up, you're going down. And sometimes you would have both multiple times in the same day. And it was, just to let people know, every day I'd have to call him at 6:30 in the morning.
Yep.
And we'd go through the first half hours of Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Post, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, New York Times. And he would have read it all. He would have read it all.
Would he really? So he wasn't relying on you to read it all?
No. So this is the thing, is that he would ask me questions such as, what are they talking about in the papers today? And then it was very clear after about a minute that he knew everything that was going on. What he wanted was my take on what was big, what his base was going to be concerned about, the way he consumes news. And so how do you keep up with that? I would have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning just to read, just to prepare to call him at 6:30 in the morning. But that was just the beginning of the day. Or sometimes you knew when the little ding would go off from Twitter, uh-oh, he's awake and he's tweeting. Sometimes my wife would just say...
And your heart started to race.
My wife would just roll over and just say, you're going to have a tough day. It's 5 a.m. and he starts tweeting. Buckle up.
Jason, you're a lifelong Republican, and yet growing up in a part of America, Seattle, that, well, these days is certainly pretty anti-Republican. Were you always a bit of a minority when you were growing up?
A bit. So my father was a welder, and so he was very working class and very much had a fiscal conservative point of view, more social libertarian. My mom was very much a social conservative, but fiscal liberal. There's not enough money that she could give away since it's other people's money. And somehow I got the conservative parts from both of my parents. But growing up, I always had the attitude of being the street fighter, being the anti-establishment, of fighting for the working class. That's where I came from. That was my background. And so I've always taken on the anti-establishment fights in politics, or even now in social media, or anything that I'm doing. So I think that really framed me for how I wanted to approach life.
Because, you know, if you want to champion, you know, the blue collar, the working class background in America, you know, for much of your early life, the Republican Party actually was a country club Republican Party. We had a Bush family, we had Romney, a party that didn't really appeal very much to working people. I mean, it must be quite difficult to be a Republican through that period of time.
Well, definitely. And one of the things that my dad would tell me is he said that I want you to go off to college. I want you to learn some different things because I don't want you to have to wake up at 4:35 in the morning and go weld all day long. And obviously he ended up getting emphysema from his job, ended up having to retire a bit early. But so I saw that struggle, what it's like to literally have to get up every single day and grind and to work hard. And that's, Nigel, where I think you were such a critical leader as we talk about the Brexit movement, of realizing here's actually where the moral compass is of our people, not just in the UK, but in the US. We've seen this populist rise up all around the world, of where the elites have completely forgotten about people who actually go and work for a living. So that's where I think you have such a critical role in history. And I think,
well, they felt taken for granted, they felt ignored, they felt they weren't being listened to. And I think, you know, the 2016 Brexit phenomenon and the Trump phenomenon were really just different sides of the same coin. It was a very aligned movement in terms of repositioning lifelong Labour voters voting Brexit, lifelong Democrats in the end then voting Trump. So you had those views, and as I say, it wouldn't always have been easy. But you finish up working for a larger-than-life Texan politician, and he's been on this show a couple of times, and in fact he was on a couple of weeks ago, Ted Cruz. Now Ted, you know, a lawyer, very, very bright, no doubt about that. And of course he ran, didn't he, to be the presidential candidate in 2016. And there you are, Jason Miller, you're advising Ted Cruz, and you're advising Ted Cruz how to put out anti-Trump adverts.
So what a lot of people don't realize is that when President Trump was talking about running in 2012, I was going to be his campaign manager.
Okay, way back then.
Way back all the way. So it was actually in 2011.
So what was it about Trump, or what was it about you that Trump saw?
Because I think we both came with the perspective of being enough of outsiders to where we realized that no one in the system could actually go and change it. We needed something completely different to try to get a reset in Washington. And so I spoke with President Trump. We kind of did the whole dance. We had everything from salary and start date and all those things put together, and then he didn't run. And then shortly after that, he redid his apprentice contract. So I admittedly, I kind of thought the whole experience was really about juicing the apprentice renegotiation. So then fast forward to 2016, people talked to, might Trump run, might not he. I just assumed that, no, he's not going to.
But you're signed up with Cruz at this stage.
So I signed up with Cruz, and because I just thought that Trump wasn't going to run. So I worked with Cruz, and even when President Trump jumped in, I didn't know where he would go, but the first time he had 20,000 people show up to a rally. I'm like, this guy has 20,000 people, and he's not even singing or playing guitar. We're in trouble. So I knew that's when we were. But no, I went at President Trump pretty tough in the primary.
Tell me about your interview with Trump. It's fascinating.
The interview with Trump was truly fascinating. So I walk in, we sit down, and everyone's in there. You had Jared, you had Ivanka, Stephen Miller, Hope Hicks, all the kind of the
inner circle,
the inner circle that you see. There's only one chair in front of him. He goes, Jason, I want you to sit right here. So we sit down, and he looks at me, and he goes, you worked with Ted Cruz in the primary. I beat him, so he reminded me, of course, that he won. And he goes,
he does that.
He does that. He goes, tell me something negative about Ted Cruz. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting job question. I go, well, not going to do it. I go, that's just not how I operate. If I worked for someone, then I don't badmouth them publicly. And he goes, no. He's like, I need to know you're on my team. Tell me something bad about him. Otherwise, I'm going to think that you're still with him. Maybe you're some kind of spy. And, I'm not going to do that, sir. Came back a third time. And he says, and I can't use the words I don't think I can on British TV, but he said, quit such and such around. Yeah. And he goes, tell me something negative about Ted Cruz or you need to get out of here. There are 20 people in the room. They're all standing behind me. And so I looked at him, and I just rolled the dice and said, Mr. Trump, I'm here to make you the next president of the United States, not to beat up on a former boss. And he busts out laughing. He goes, good, you passed the test. Jared, tell him to start on Monday. My armpits were drenched. I thought it was finished. I thought the trap door was going to be like in one of the James Bond movies. I'd just drop down in Trump Tower. But I passed the test, but that was the interview.
And I guess he was looking for, are you a loyal person?
Yeah. He wanted to know that if we're going to go into battle together, if I'm going to be the guy who's calling him at 6:30 in the morning, that I'd be someone who you could trust. I was going to go into that. And that's why I think in politics we lose a lot. That's too much of that is gone now. I think people try to go and make the quick buck or things of that nature.
Yeah.
And if you're going to go into the foxhole, if you're going to take that confidence on from someone, you have to return the respect.
Now, you nearly got the big press spokesman job, but a few personal problems crept up, and they do in people's lives. And he goes into the White House, and it doesn't take long, does it, before there's the Mueller inquiry, before we get Russia. It never, ever ends. I had it here. I'm still getting it, by the way. I'm still getting it. I was accused last week by a Labour MP using parliamentary privilege of earning an extraordinary sum of money in 2018 from the Russians. It's completely untrue. So we saw this on both sides of the pond. But a bit of sort of breaking story that's come out today that I've just got, which I know you're on top of, which is Donald Trump on Thursday, that's today, guys, sued Hillary Clinton and several other Democrats, alleging they tried to rig the 2016 presidential election by tying his campaign to Russia. So he's talking here about the 2016 campaign, but it didn't stop there, did it? It kept on going and going and going. This time it's Ukraine that dominates everything. In fact, the last half of the presidency is dominated not by Russia, but by Ukraine. And it's all to do with the Biden family, it's all to do with Hunter Biden, it's all to do with a very highly paid contract with a firm called Burisma, an oil and gas company, paying him $83,000 a month, I think it was. And he gets impeached for trying to sort of dig behind and find out the truth. At least that's what I think. The impeachments were over. In that election campaign, Hunter Biden's laptop appears with all sorts of compromising evidence, not just about his involvement with those companies, but about his father's effective endorsement. And it gets raised on a few TV debates. We're told it's inappropriate for it to be discussed. I think Chris Wallace in the first debate wouldn't have it discussed. But just this week, the New York Times have admitted, haven't they, that the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop were true.
So, Nigel, it's even more scandalous than you would say. So it's a couple weeks before the election, and this laptop that Hunter had left behind at a computer store in one of his rages, I guess, or, whatever phase he may have been in life at the moment, but it had all of the details for the business dealings, not just Ukraine, but China. And in there specifically said that he had to set aside 10% for the big guy. Now, if you're Hunter Biden, you're the son of the former vice president of the United States. Okay, the big guy is not, Jim Biden or, some other Biden in the family. It's Joe Biden. They got the New York Post had their Twitter account shut down, their Facebook account shut down, their YouTube account shut down. It was effectively blacklisted from being discussed. Adam Schiff, who was, again, he's one of the Democrat rabble-rousers on Capitol Hill, he would take to the TV airwaves and say, this is the Russians, again, doing in 2020 what they did in 2016. And the media in the U.S. and big tech went along with it.
And yet, with the mass mail-out of ballots, which America had never seen before, I did try and warn everybody that we'd seen how postal voting can be abused here. But you're not going to win the next election, Jason Miller, by moaning about the last election or the election before. Even if he's successful in suing Clinton, it doesn't help you win the next election. I just feel that Trump is backtrading too much at the moment and not looking ahead to a reforming agenda. I mean, he is going to run again, isn't he?
I'm pretty convinced. I was with him on Monday this week in Palm Beach. He didn't use the magical words, but if I was a gambling person, then I'd gamble all my money on President Trump running, at least as of this moment.
Yes.
But I agree with you. I think right now, especially with the polling showing head-to-head Trump versus Biden at this moment, Trump's ahead by several points. Talk about 2024. Talk about where we're going to go, how we're going to get things back to
that's how I feel.
Gas was only $2 a gallon, not $7 a gallon. So I've shared that with the president as well, and I completely agree with you.
Do you like him?
I do. He's a good ally. I think he's a He's very fair with his staff. He's someone who really cares about the people who work with him. The other thing, too, is you know exactly where he stands at all times because he'll tell you. And I think one of the misnomers...
I mean, what's it like having a real rollicking from Trump?
So, give you one quick thing. Once, I've gotten chewed out for a couple of things. That was part of my personal issues, which I got resolved. But no, and he does not pull his punches. But I went in once to take him it was a memo. It was like a kind of an inside baseball political thing about here's how we're going to talk about your tax plan. He looks at the memo, looks at me, looks at the memo. How much time did you spend on this? I'm like, like 15 minutes, sir. And he's like, no, you spent days on this, didn't you? No. And he goes, why didn't you come talk to me first? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to call the Today Show. I'll be in my pajamas in the bedroom. I'll just tell them over the phone, here's what my economic plan is. 4 million people will listen to it and watch it in real time. And then we'll go out and we'll drive the day. Hillary won't even be out of bed yet, and we'll be driving the news. Why would you waste all this time on a memo if you came to me? I'm the best strategist that there is. So he had no problem telling me if my ideas were stupid. But also, too, I think you would also respect, you'd be surprised, actually would take a lot more input than you would think that Donald Trump does. If you could tell him how to be more effective on some of his strategies, if you kind of understood where he was going, he'll listen to you. And in fact, if you're in the room, he demands you have an opinion.
Yeah, I must admit, the time I've spent with him, very often, people say, does he listen? Many, many times I've been there, he has listened and asks very perceptive and very good questions. Jason Miller, absolute pleasure to have you on Talking Pints. Getter, your new big project. You're basically taking on Twitter, aren't you?
We're taking on big tech. We're at 5 million users globally. The UK is our number 3 market. We've just brought on Russell Brand is now on the platform.
Yeah, it's big deal.
Majid Nawaz, Matt Letitia, Andy No, a whole bunch of folks who are here in the UK. We're growing, and it's pretty exciting.
Good for you. Best of luck. Thank you.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Hello there, welcome back to Farage with me, Michelle Dewberry. Lots of comments coming in, by the way, about the whole Will Smith debacle. Got to say, most of you so far that I've seen are saying you don't believe it, that it was all set up. Was it? I'm not so sure myself. Anyway, get in touch. You can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs. Let me know your thoughts on that. But for now, one of my favourite parts of the show, this is the only reason I said yes to covering this, because I get a free drink, and I'm a northerner, and when there is free alcohol, we're there, what can I say? And tonight, there is a man appearing that has been basically begging to come on the show with me for weeks, months. Every night I say, no, you cannot. But tonight, I decided to make an exception. I speak of the businessman extraordinaire who made millions, 80 million in fact, by the age of 31 in the field of mobile phones. He was the first, youngest, should I say, person to ever own a Premier League football club. And he's done huge amounts ever since. Restaurants, films, properties, you name it. His highlight of his life is living with me, isn't it? Simon
Indeed.
Jordan.
Indeed.
I've managed all the time, haven't I? You asked to come on this show, Jubes & Co. with me.
Yeah, if asking to come on this show is equivalent to saying, not if you tied my tongue to the back of a bus and dragged me here, then I guess, yes, asking on the show is what I wanted to do.
Simon Jordan, good evening to you. Just do a nice little cheers.
Nice to see you.
Simon's got a gin and tonic.
Home from home.
Yeah, the worst looking gin and tonic I've ever seen in my life. Apologies for that.
No lemon.
Tell me, yeah, no lemon. I mean, what's going on here? No lemon for
Enough
Simon
of the one
Jordan.
sitting opposite me.
Simon.
Tell me.
You know, you made, I've got it written here, 80 million pounds by the age of 31. How did you do that?
By being effective in the industry that I was in, by having a lot of ambition, a lot of determination, knowing what I was doing, working hard, and taking advantage of an industry that lent itself to enormous growth. You know, it was an interesting time. I was very ambitious. I was very focused. I was young, but I was also aware enough of how the world is held together, having been in businesses before, having had failures before. People talk about successes in life and all the achievements they have. And I've seen a lot of people come on here, mates of mine like Theo Paphitis, and they talk about the things that they do in their lives. But success is like an iceberg. All the rubbish and all the failures are beneath the surface, and all the things that you do well are the things that you see above it. So you take lots of things from successes and failure builds up the ability to overcome adversity. So how I did it was an industry that lent itself to that sort of growth. I built 250 shops in 5 years, never borrowed any money, never had any investors, never had an overdraft, but just had an innate ability to be able to maximise the industry that I was in. And of course, I had good people working alongside me, a good staff, and I was a motivated leader. So all of that afforded an opportunity, and I had the wherewithal at the time to be able to capitalise on it.
And what did you do once you'd capitalise? Once you've got this big bag of money, what then?
Well, it's one of those things I often debate about equitable swaps. You know, the idea of cashing in. I never really wanted to sell the business, but one of my shareholders, that was one of my startup partners, was very keen to want to sell, and he'd been keen to sell for some time. And because of the construction of equity in our business, it made it slightly more incumbent upon me to do so. So I looked at it and thought the industry is probably at its peak now in terms of businesses like mine that have started up, that run hard and fast and really run for the finishing line of being successful. And there was an opportunity. So I took it, I sold it, I swapped it for a bag of cash. Now that's the equitability side of things, because one of the things you do, if you do things for success, money is a caveat and it's a qualification. But for me, it was never the benchmark. So I needed something else to inspire me, motivate me and challenge me. So I figured I'd have this sort of Dr. Pepper moment. How difficult can it be? I know, I'll buy the football club that my father used to play for. So I decided that that was the way to go, to buy a football club, because I had a sportsman's mentality, having had a father that played football, having been in and around football myself and been on the books of various professional football clubs, Chelsea and Crystal Palace included. And I just thought it was the right time, with a balance of ego and ambition and wanting to make sure everyone knew that I'd been successful, that a football club might lend itself to my personality and my drive. And it was also at a time when that industry was going like that in terms of broadcast deals, and the opportunity for football to be a proper, mature industry was beginning to manifest itself.
And you know, you talk about football, and you know, I'm reliably informed that frequently opposing fans would sing to you in the stands in a not very flattering manner. So, for example, I hear that they would sing, "Simon Jordan is a beep, is a beep." We live in a society now, Simon, where kind of offence and being offensive, you know, you can't say certain things. And I wonder, you know, you have been hated by many football fans, called names, as I just explained.
No, that's not true. I mean, football is very tribalistic, and I was a very young owner, and I was very in your face, you know, and I had very strong opinions. I wasn't interested in the backdrop of the nonsense that went before and all of self-serving drivel that I thought football perpetuated. I was going to make sure that my point was heard. I was also in a very high-profile set of circumstances in my life, from the business that I invested in to the people that I hung around with. And so it brought me to the fore. And when things happened, I didn't pull away. I didn't pull any punches. I wasn't political in my views. If Birmingham City wanted to nick my football manager, which they did, I was very strident about my attitude towards Birmingham, saying things like, why would he want to go there? What's the best thing about Birmingham? The road out. Why would he go to a club that's never been in the Premier League? What was the last thing that Birmingham have ever won? Nothing. So that's going to make you, with people, slightly unpopular with certain segments of their fan bases. But also in the football fraternity, what people knew was I said what I meant, and I meant what I said, and I also had the courage of my convictions. That's why managers that mucked about with me got injunctions put against them. That's why managers that tried to tell
in quite
lies...
spectacular ways, by the way.
Yeah.
Is it Ian Dowie?
Yep, that was a writ. That was a writ. That was my sort of Lee Harvey Oswald moment for TV. Now, they talk about Lee Harvey Oswald being shot in America, never turning TV off after that because they would have missed something. I served a writ on a press conference for a manager that had lied to me about wanting to leave the club to move back to the north, and actually ended up about 2 miles down the road to one of our biggest rivals. So I think he thought he was funny, and I think he thought he was clever trying or artificially manufacturing a situation with £1 million compensation that we were due to be paid would be obviated by me allowing him out his contract on goodwill. He thought that was clever, so served him with a writ live on television, then took him to court, and then got him convicted for fraudulent misrepresentation, which is the hardest case to prove. So people took that with both measures of, OK, you can be a little bit of a Flash Herbert sometimes, and a little bit, you know, you live in Spain, you've always got a tan, your hair was blonde, and you drive a Ferrari.
Funny you should mention your hair. Let's look at your hair, by the way, as we're talking. Got some pictures of your great hair. Look at that.
Why would you do such a thing? It's called treachery.
Let me be clear. I was just about to say you got off lightly, because some of the states of your hair, I mean, good grief. I had to find pictures that I could actually use. I mean, what on God's green earth was you thinking? Look at that.
Well, the tragedy of it is my mother works in the beauty industry, and she was spending a lot of time talking to me about my hair, and I thought at the time it was the look. I did okay, Michelle.
That's not you, is it?
Yeah, that's me and Trevor Sinclair.
That's you?
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Well, that's me after I met you, so I look haggard, drawn, beaten up, and ready to fall over.
You look awful. I've not...
Like I just said.
Very off-putting. Anyway, you work now, you do a lot of things now, but one of the things you do is in the media.
Yes,
now,
I do.
I find it fascinating because, like you, my background's not particularly media. I find myself in the media.
Yep.
I wonder, what role do you think the media plays in this country? Do you think it's a force for good?
I have mixed emotions about it, because I think mainstream media is in a very invidious position, because social media drives the agenda and mainstream media comes in and colours the gaps in now. So it has to run along a certain parameter. Also, with the advent of 24-hour rolling news, which I think is one of the greatest evils, because it's a content-driven business where it needs to keep on driving content and self-perpetuating. You need to have 15 different epidemiologists on to be able to contradict one another so the next news cycle can be fed during COVID. We need to have 15 different economic guys on to argue about the pros and cons of inflation so that media cycles can drive their content and then can drive their advertising revenues and fulfill their model. I do think, and it's an irony, that I sit inside the media, but I'm quite privileged because I can sit inside the media and within reason I can say what I want and get away of saying what I want within reason, because there is an element of responsibility. You can't run around saying exactly what you please, not just because of Ofcom guidelines, but because you can't and you shouldn't. There should be some form of responsibility behind what you do and don't say.
Really? So people shouldn't be able to say? Do you think people have got a right not to be offended?
No. I think it depends what you take offence at. I mean, I do think one of the byproducts of our society is a lack of resilience, and I do think people should remember that when people call them names, then most of the time they're total strangers. As you have pointed out, I had 25,000 fans inside football stadiums that didn't like me calling me rude names. I'm in the mindset, and maybe it's generational, there's only one thing worse than people talking about you, is people not talking about you. So I take that sort of mindset, and I don't really care about the opinions of total strangers. When it becomes the opinions of valued peers and you're overreaching and your grasp is being exceeded by your reach, then you should think about some of the things you say. But I do sit there. I sit here watching news channels. I watch your channel. I watch the Sky News of the world and other people and Sky Sports and want to put my foot through the television for some of
What? Shut up. That's not you.
Through some of the
don't...
disingenuity and duplicity and double standards and lack of education, lack of awareness and binary thoughts, because nothing is binary. We don't live in this world where there's no nuance, and there doesn't seem to be a propensity or desire for nuance to be part of any conversation, whether it's COVID, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's economics, whether it's Brexit.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think people are entranced in their positions. They don't understand how to debate things. They don't have an open mind. They don't want to have an open mind. And there's agendas. If you look at some of the biases through the last 2 years about the manner in which certain broadcasters have represented information, if you look at the way that the Brexit situation, be for it or against it, if you look at the BBC for the way they advanced Brexit, every time you went onto a TV show like Question Time, which I did, you would find yourself on there with 3 Remainers and 1 Brexiteer. That's not a balanced conversation. That's a weighted dialogue. So I do feel that broadcasting lacks responsibility.
The GB News Tavern has been declared open. I'm joined by Garry Lavin, who's done many things in his life, including presenting shows on BBC Two and indeed The One Show. And Garry, I want to say welcome to GB News.
Oh, yeah.
Cheers.
Great to be here. Fantastic.
Well, it's good to have you here. Now, ahead of the programme, you've done a little drawing.
Yeah, I thought I was being a bit naughty, really, but you be the judge.
You've got to find it first.
There you are. Go on.
Right, there we are.
You can keep.
Thanks, cheers. It says, there we are. Thanks, cheers. Have you crushed nuts? Well, I have to say, we've had previous complaints on Talking Pints about the lack of ice. We now have an ice machine. And I will admit, we haven't gone in for nut, but here we are. We now have nuts just for you. So there we are.
I don't even like nuts.
Oh, well, that's fine.
I couldn't miss the musical joke, you know.
I love him. Listen, I love it. It's a great picture. And, Garry, you're an artist, an engineer, an inventor, almost a bit of an architect, I think, in some ways.
Well, I've been building some experimental structures and buildings and things. I'm not an architect, but I am a designer.
Yeah.
So I like to solve problems. So, you know, and one of the things I like to look at is alternative ways of doing stuff, you know. So I made a lot of these little structures as earthquake-proof buildings, hurricane-proof buildings, and it all began through doing my own project with Stonehenge, showing how you could move the stones to Stonehenge using very simple, flexible materials. And I realised then that we can get more out of structures if they're flexible. And let's get away from that big concrete idea. You know, let's just if you're in a hurricane, it's great being able to withstand the wind. But if you can absorb that wind, make it go around you, if you can absorb that earthquake, think of Italy. You know, they're always troubled by earthquakes.
Yeah.
If you can absorb that and transfer all the forces all around the building, you're on a winner. You know, but also I thought, I also need somewhere to live. Maybe I can make this work for myself. But I'm running out of life, really.
Where does all this creative thinking come from? Does it come from childhood? Does it come from school? Where does it come from?
Well, a natural talent to communicate visually. I mean, when I was 18 months old or something, my mum and dad never bothered with crayons with me or paper or anything, but they gave me a piece of paper. And the first thing I got hold of it, and the first thing I drew was a car. The cars were a bit more square then, you know. I drew this little square car, and they looked at each other and said, "Blimey, where's he going? What's happening here?" You know. But then we lived in a large, rambling slum, complete slum. Hardly any running water. Toilet 100 yards away, in a big wasteland. But it meant I was allowed to run free in this land, and I could build dens and dig huge holes to catch me dad and build all sorts of stuff and just invent things, you know.
So you had the freedom to do those things?
I had the freedom to do that. It wasn't suburbia, you know. And all the local kids used to join. I used to have a massive gang. Apparently, I didn't know, but I had Lavin's gang because all these kids we built catapults and aircraft, all sorts of stuff. And then a natural progression was to actually, I joined the Vauxhall Craftsmen's Guild as a student, and it was a postal thing, and started as lads do. Every lad likes cars, and they like to design cars, so I started doing that. But I also like to make things, so it was natural that I'd end up going to college.
Yeah.
But I began in the cotton mill, the textile mill first, and then went to do various qualifications and teaching qualifications. Taught in Manchester for a while in high school, rough high school, and then taught in further education and in FE and HE. But I got ill. I got septicemia. I've got a disability in my legs, and it took me 6 months to walk again. I thought I was going to, they thought I was going to snuff it. But I survived, and so I thought, this is nature's way of telling me to get on with my own stuff. So I retired early. And then I set up, one of the first people on the internet and in the UK, and I set up this big website advertising outdoor crafts and building walls and forging iron and all that sort of stuff. Nobody was interested in that, but they did want to come along in my Land Rover and tootle about the moors. And then I started getting orders for special Land Rover vehicles. So I said, yeah, we can build them. And
So I mean, you were in retirement beginning to make a living out of what you love doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I shouldn't have done really because I was in a lot of pain, but I couldn't. You can't stand still. I mean, look, you know, I carry my ideas book around wherever I go. Mind you, again, I'm running out of life. I'll never make half of these things. You're in here. And you just do, don't you? It's bread and butter. And I used to say to the students, you are what you try out. 90% of design is what you leave out. You don't know what's going to work unless you try all sorts of things out, you know. But then I was stuck for a bit, you know, as a result of that. The BBC found me.
And how did that happen?
Well, I built all these vehicles, and there was a driving programme, and they wanted a four-wheel drive expert. And because I'd been one of the first people on the internet, my name popped up. I used to pop up in the top 5 search engines, and they got me in and put me on this as a little cutaway story where I had my big roughy-tufty truck, brought it to Chelsea.
Were you scared of doing telly?
I'd been a teacher, communication.
Yep.
I knew how to, and I'd been a pub storyteller and all that, you know. So I knew that.
I believe you.
The timing and the punchlines, and there's a certain rhythm to it all. And I thought, but I was, but yeah, I'm nervous now, you know. I mean, there is a nervousness. But they found me, and apparently it was a success. So they tried me out for a series. And it's a social history series, but I made it a technology series, all about the inventions in your home. And it was great. I'm a complete unknown, and it got, what did it get, 12% of the audience, 2.7 million viewers.
Fantastic.
Is that fantastic?
No, I mean,
well,
amazing.
I think it's fantastic.
Well, it is, because actually, as a society, we've almost turned our backs on engineering and making things and doing things. Young kids... I mean, I know that you talk design and technology and things like this.
Yeah.
You know, young kids growing up are not encouraged to become engineers. They're encouraged to do social sciences and all sorts of things. So the fact that you do a BBC Two series, every home should have one, and big numbers of people watch it, shows actually maybe there's a gap out there somewhere.
Well, I would have thought so, but...
maybe we're not catering for this properly.
Well, that's 19 years ago now, and they said to me, we've got enough middle-aged presenters, thanks, and that was that, and somebody else got the work, and and it was difficult. So we went it was hard finding any kind of work, and I still got it. The teacher's pension it's not very good, so I had to find some sort of work. So we went to teach. My missus went to teach hairdressing in the Isle of Man, and she taught in Rochdale originally, and that you can imagine the inner city problems there. And she got fed up with it, And our lad was 11, and we wanted to take him and bring him up. Dyslexic, quiet. We knew he would just be subsumed in a school in the north of England. Took him to the Isle of Man. It was fantastic, and he got the childhood that I got. He got that roaming around the countryside.
Which kids don't have anymore.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
The GB News Tavern is open. I'm joined by broadcaster, sports fanatic and political campaigner Jonny Gould. Jonny,
good to see you, Nigel.
Good to see you. Now, Aston Villa, West Midlands man.
Cheers, mate. Up the Villa.
Was it football that got you into sport, or was it all sport that always interested you?
It was. Dad used to bring home the Express and Star and the Evening Mail every night. He used to tell me off every night because I started from the back page. And he basically said to me, you've got to start reading the newspaper from the front, look at news and politics and current affairs. And I said, I just love sport. And he said, you'll never get a job out of that. You'll never earn any money from that. And he always reminded me of that. But it has been a great career. But I'm very much now in news and current affairs.
Yeah, I know that you've kind of moved on with it. But when it comes to being a sporting broadcaster, which is what you became, I mean, how does a young kid that likes football become a sporting broadcaster? Because it's like that's like a dream, isn't it?
It is. I just went for it. I started doing hospital radio, like so many kids did. I was told that hospital radio was a big hospital radio station, Birmingham Hospital Radio, 30 hospitals around Birmingham and Solihull, and they said, you can't be ambitious here. You've got to just devote your time to... Yeah, right. So I did that for a year or so at 18, and then I wrote to, BBC local radio, and I had approximately this voice as a kid. got myself on the breakfast show, which was a bit of a shock. Had an out-of-body experience in my first bulletin. It was a surprise to me to be on air. And the rest is history. One of the great things is, from the word go, when you work in sport, when you work in a studio of sport, you work with absolutely everybody, the greatest broadcasters. And Birmingham people, maybe people around the country will remember Tony Butler, who was the first guy I ever worked with. Yeah. Who was this Brummie who used to go, "On your bike, son." He was like, when accents became trendy in about 1975, people stopped talking like that on air and started to talk with A-up accents wherever they were from. And there was a Brummie thing going on with great broadcasters in Birmingham.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, sports broadcasters, sports commentators, they build up a great rapport, don't they, with their public? A great rapport. It means a lot, you know.
You have to.
What are the sports you love best?
Football is my thing.
Yep.
I love tennis as well.
Yep.
I used to love snooker. I'm not saying I fell out of love with it, but it sort of became about whatever Ronnie O'Sullivan was doing, and players now who, it's not as glamorous it was, but I think snooker benefited from the fact that football went down the chute in the 80s because of Heysel and Hillsborough, and it was just so televisual. There was the bad one, Alex Higgins. There was the well-groomed one, everyone's favourite son, Steve Davis. There was the grinder. It had great personality.
And of course, there were fewer TV channels.
Yeah.
So I think it was the final that Dennis Taylor won in the late 80s.
That was great.
And I watched that. It was dramatic stuff.
Brilliant.
And was 18 million people watching
That's right.
Like 11:30, quarter to midnight on a Sunday night. You know, sports coverage has changed, hasn't it? You know, I talked about a few channels. Now, cricket's the game that I love to watch on television, but I watch everything else as well, you know, and pleased to see Palace winning 4-0 in the quarterfinals the other day.
It's possible.
Yeah, so I come, but I follow Johnny, I'll watch anything, sports-wise. I mean, I enjoy pretty much anything. But it was quite easy, wasn't it, really? Because you had, BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, then Channel 4 did cricket for a bit. Did it very well, I thought, actually.
Yes.
Now, I pay a Sky subscription because I want to watch overseas cricket, but then it just came to the recent tour and Sky weren't covering that, so then I have to subscribe to BT Sport. And now if I want to watch a particular boxing match, that'll be another 10 or 15 quid to watch that. Are they putting sport beyond the price range of lots of the fans?
They are, and worse still, actually, they're creating a problem in terms of the next generation being captivated by it. Cricket's big problem was that they put it behind the Sky paywall. What's happened to it? They've actually created a football concept. I think cricket has diminished because they've taken too much money from Sky, and the debate within cricket now is to try and put it more on terrestrial television. There was a bit of Channel 4 action, wasn't there, with repeats late at night, Mark Nicholas, etc. They've got to do more of that.
Well, that 2000, I just did a tribute to Shane Warne.
Yes.
You know, who not only was a genius cricketer, but also became a celeb across the Aussie, UK thing brilliantly. But I remember 2005, that amazing Ashes series, when it was nip and tuck all the way through. You didn't know till the last day of the last test at the Oval who was going to win. And that afternoon, there were 8 million people. You know, they should have been at work, most of them. but there were 8 million people watching cricket on terrestrial TV. And now, because, as I say, you've got to have BT Sport and you've got to have Sky, now the number wouldn't even be, well, it'd probably be about 10% of that.
Absolutely.
So that is an issue, isn't it?
At every level of every sport, there is the shop floor, the industry, should we say, and then there is the opportunity to engage millions of more people. I think about that with the Champions League, which is arguably the greatest football in the world, which is behind a paywall. And then you've got the World Cup, which everyone gets involved in because it's on ITV and BBC. And however big football is, it needs that engagement. Crowds do go up, the popularity goes up. And the same goes for cricket. If they're going to have a 5 or 6 test series in the summer, one of them needs to be on ITV or Channel 4, somewhere, BBC.
Can you explain to me how, and I was there at the final of the European Championships.
Yes.
I mean, shocking crowd.
Yeah, you got in.
I think we talked about it.
And you had a ticket, didn't you?
I did. I didn't jump the barrier or anything like that.
Not you.
But I saw a few that...
Yeah, I bet you did.
How is it that Italy beat England on penalties and win and are the champions and haven't lost a game of football for, I think it was 37 games? You know, looked to be an amazing side.
Yeah.
A great goalkeeper, the lot. and now they get beaten by North Macedonia and haven't qualified for the World Cup. How does that happen? Or is that why we watch sport?
Exactly. I would say it put North Macedonia on the map, but I still don't know where it is. But that's the amazing thing. Italy had qualified for every single World Cup until the last one, which also they failed. This is a real crisis for Italian football. But they are the maddest football nation. I mean, they won the World Cup in 2006, and the bottom had fallen out of their Lo Scudetto, their title, because there was corruption and relegation of their major clubs, and yet their national team came together and won it. And so they can be the European champion and lose World Cups either side. This is something that England never do. Italy are a tournament side. They were my tip to win the tournament at Euro 2020 until we got to the final, where I had to be patriotic and tipping them. And of course, Italy were inevitably going to win that one.
Well, Jonny, you and I could talk about sports for hours, but I've got to move on. As you said, you're doing more current affairs, commentary, and podcasting, and all the things you're doing. And you had some pretty strong feelings about Jeremy Corbyn, didn't you?
Yes, I did. It kind of launched the positive part of my podcast. It's called Jonny Gould's Jewish State. It's not a campaign for Israel per se, although I do support the state of Israel, of course. It's about the state of me and the state of, I think, the diaspora Jewish community. And I have guests on which challenge all sorts of mainstream orthodoxy, which when you're Jewish is not very difficult to do because there are so many opinions and so many different ideas out there. And my guests do that. So the last guest I had on is a guy who tweets in Arabic exclusively. He has 500,000 followers. He's an Israeli. He was born in Beirut and Lebanon. And he challenges the Arab populace with content about Israel, which they never get. They're lied to by their mainstream media. And this guy's called Eddie Cohen. I had Professor Alan Dershowitz on.
Did you?
Yeah. And I asked him about the BBC. And he said I was the perfect guy to ask about the BBC. He accused them of advocacy, not journalism, because they're always about getting people on one side of the story and not the other. He said he was the perfect person to ask. And when they kind of shamed him and then they said this is below our standards, even if you didn't know anything about Dershowitz, as I'm sure most people didn't actually know the ins and outs of the case and the allegations which he says are completely false against him, when the BBC say that he fell below their standards, what does that mean? It is a slander of a kind. So I really go for good guests. And it is an interesting listen, I'd like to think, and it's not just
he's got good guests. Never invited me, obviously. But
you are on my hit list. I shouldn't say that, should I?
Corbyn, anti-Semitism. Has Starmer beaten it off?
He is trying to be the man who isn't Corbyn. And he isn't an anti-Semite. And he is Sir Keir Starmer, not Jeremy Corbyn. However, he has not addressed the simmering undercurrent of the broad church that is the Labour Party.
Black Lives Matter, this organisation appeared, and everybody was to bow down and take the knee. And I knew Black Lives Matter from my time in America.
Right.
I knew what they were. I knew it was hard left, Marxist, defund the police, etc. And criticising it was, for me, a very difficult place. You were in a similar position on that, weren't you?
I was. I was in the Supporters Trust at Aston Villa. I spoke out about it. I spoke out about it on a personal basis, not representing the football club or indeed the Supporters Trust.
Yeah.
And I was subjected to appalling racism, some of it from officers inside the football club. If it wasn't for the chief executive and the chief operations officer, it could have got very mucky in a Yorkshire Cricket Club kind of way. But I salute Christian Purslow and Paul Tyrrell basically for taking care of me. I'm just a fan now. That'll do me. I love Villa. There's nothing the haters can do about that. I am from Birmingham. It is the top of my identity. It's my club.
But what happened? I mean, Black Lives Matter was emblazoned all over Sky Sports. I mean, this organisation that no one knew anything about, we were all supposed to support. Did we all go mad?
Yeah, we didn't do our due diligence on them at all. And they finally, Richard Masters at the Premier League decided it was a good idea without doing the appropriate due diligence on it. And then suddenly, after the kerfuffle, Black Lives Matter became no room for racism. It became something slightly different. However, that knee thing still happens.
Yeah, I can't work it out.
It's difficult to see. And now what they've done is put it into the hands of the players to decide when it's going to stop. When's it going to stop?
I know. It's just...
and now it does... I mean, when I go to games, it gets an applause because it's no room for racism.
Yeah.
But that knee thing, it's a problem. It's a problem.
Johnny, we could talk for hours. Thank you for joining me on Talking Pints. Thank you very much indeed.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers and remaining rather chilly. Let's take a look at the details. The southwest will be rather cloudy, particularly in the west, where there'll also be the most frequent showers. The best of the sunny spells will be across eastern areas. The southeast will be mostly dry, although an isolated light shower is possible this evening. The winds will be light, with plenty of sunny spells. There'll also be sunny spells and isolated showers across Wales, but drier for much of the day, especially in the west. It will be a mostly dry end to the afternoon across the Midlands too. An isolated light shower is possible, but for most it will be light winds and bright or sunny spells. The northeast of England will finish Saturday afternoon with plenty of dry weather. Earlier showers will have faded, and we end the day with light winds and plenty of sunshine on offer. There'll also be plenty of sunshine across southern Scotland this evening. There'll be some cloud at times too, but it will remain dry to end the day. It's a similar story for Northern Ireland this evening. Dry here also, with some fair weather, cloud and sunny spells, leading to a cold and frosty night to come. Clear spells and light winds will also lead to a cold and frosty night across most of the UK tonight, and that's how the weather's shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.